From Portland, Oregon, it's time for A Different View, with women's perspectives on the fight to end prohibition again, with Portland Dispensaries examiner and mother of four, Jennifer Alexander, and professional healthcare provider Iva Cunningham from Alternative Medical Choices, Inc. Now, here's A Different View.
Welcome to A Different View. I'm Jennifer, here with Iva. Hello.
Yay. How was your week, Jennifer?
Oh, it's been a busy one.
Oh, hasn't it? That has been an insane week.
There's lots of news coming out, and I expect that it's just going to get busier and busier news-wise.
I know, lots and lots of it's like... It seemed like after Washington and Colorado legalized, the murmur kind of slowed down a little bit. Then all of a sudden, it's just like marijuana news left and right.
And it's everywhere. It's mainstream. Mm-hmm. It's
everywhere.
Underground news.
Everyone's talking
everything.
about it.
All with different perspectives, which is making it even more interesting. Because instead of just hearing this one flat dialogue that we've been hearing for years, we're hearing, what about the economical benefits? What about the legalities? What about international?
Well, I think that the frame is shifting to not we're never going to legalize, but when we legalize, and what are we going to do?
Absolutely. So we've got a few different stories we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about this legislator in
lovely story.
New York was it, I think?
Uh-huh.
And he's known to come out against marijuana, was just busted with marijuana. That's a great topic.
It goes back to what I always say, everyone's on the take. Everyone is.
Right. And the Oregonian, there's been a lot of pressure. I think we talked about it a couple weeks back about them talking about the legislator looking at marijuana here in Oregon. We're going to talk about a couple of stories that have finally come out with them.
Yes, exciting news.
Yeah. And then there's an article that came out. It's kind of from sources sort of article, but
is that like some people say?
No, it's basically the murmurings that are going on with Eric Holder talking with the state of Colorado and Washington.
Yeah.
So it's nothing on the record yet, but there's some interesting murmurs on how they're looking to approach legal marijuana.
If they don't want to defy the people.
Yeah. And so then we're going to talk about that towards the end of the show, and then the final thing we're going to be talking about is the UN Commission on Narcotic Drugs. They've been meeting this last week, so there's been a lot of international dialogue about these topics.
It's exciting. It's nice to see it on the conversation still being brought up, even on a global level. I think most people are starting to recognize that what we're doing isn't working. This whack-a-mole approach is not working.
And I think there's been a lot of murmuring internationally about changing these laws. I mean, Uruguay is legalized, and other places. We've got Amsterdam's always been decriminalized,
and we've had a lot of people coming out saying absolutely more restrictions, more restrictions. We've had a lot of that too. But
internationally, it's nice to hear both sides of that dialogue also getting attention. So.
Right. We'll talk a little bit more about that and some other international stuff that I found that might be kind of interesting. You're listening to A Different View with Jennifer and Iva. We'll be right back.
The law offices of Omar Figueroa would like to remind you to stand up for your rights. Please do not give up your precious liberties. There's nothing wrong with standing up for our constitutional rights, and in fact, it's the only way to honor the Constitution that recognizes our natural rights. Treat law enforcement with respect and respect the Constitution by standing up for your rights. If you are detained or arrested, stand up for your rights by repeating, "I respectfully invoke all my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search and seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to speak to my attorney, Omar Figueroa." Omar Figueroa has more than a decade of experience in federal and California courts and graduated from Yale University, Stanford Law School, and Trial Lawyers College. Please contact the law offices of Omar Figueroa at 415-489-0420 or 707-829-0215. or on the web at www.omarfigueroa.com.
No more hesitation, we want legalization. Fight for your right, rise to stop our liberation. No more hesitation, we want legalization. Fight for your right, rise to stop our liberation. From nation to nation, a global corporation, I keep it in circulation. This is my occupation. They come with a prescription, and I give them medication. For just a small donation, they can feel the aeration. We smoke for meditation, it gives us inspiration to a higher elevation, for divine revelation. Sometimes for relaxation, for that mind dilation. Put a new strain in rotation to change the sensation. When I'm on vacation, from every complication, I can feel it in my spirit. It's a the slow purification. It's an observation about a generation. We seem to be starving for any sensation. All innovation, expanded imagination.
Now we're back with a different view.
Welcome back. You're listening to A Different View. This first story, it cracks me up, and you know, I don't even think it matters what the facts are. It's just funny anyway. So the story is anti-marijuana New York Assemblyman busted for weed possession, and it's the anti-marijuana legislator Steve Katz. He was known as one of the people opposing a lot of the reform efforts happening there in New York.
Yeah.
And, and so he was pulled over, and according to the Raw Story article, which I'm going to post to Facebook in a second, after noting the odor of marijuana, a New York state trooper found Katz in possession of a small bag of marijuana, a statement from police said, according to the Times Union. Katz was given an appearance ticket for having less than 25 grams and is scheduled to appear in Coyman's Town Court on March 8th. He also faces charges for speeding. So they pulled him over for speeding. The officer says, I smell marijuana, found some, and he's busted.
Don't you know who I am? I vote against all those bills. Well, maybe he's not for medical, but maybe he's for just straight out legalization.
Smoking?
Just smoking.
Well, and, you know, not to incriminate myself, but I've had pot in the car before, you know, and I've actually been pulled over in the past with pot in the car, and I've never had an officer, I smell your pot. You know, I mean, if you've got a really little amount, just the presence of it usually isn't strong enough, unless it's an excuse, don't get me wrong.
Less than 25 grams, right?
Yeah, so that'd be less than an ounce. But
maybe he had a
I have
sniffer.
to wonder if he was smoking it and that was the odor that was smelled. And they're not clear if it was burnt marijuana or fresh marijuana, you know, so...
Right.
But I have to wonder if he was driving down the road speeding, smoking a joint, got pulled over, or if they just happened to find a little baggie of marijuana somewhere in the car and attribute it to him. I mean, those are kind of different paradigms. You know?
Right.
Either way, though, I find it interesting that he's caught in the trap of the drug war that he supports.
That he's helped, you know, perpetuating and supporting. I find it interesting. It kind of just like prohibition of alcohol. It's not any different. It's just another substance. It doesn't really matter. People are going to seek out alternatives to, you know, to relaxing other substances to do that with, and absolutely marijuana, there's nothing wrong with it. But to continue to be a hypocrite and oppose anything that might come up that might have protected him.
In all honesty, and it sounds so mean to say, I don't know what, there's a statement we're going to play in a minute where he basically says, you know, when the facts come out, but I kind of hope they throw the book at him. I hope he gets stuck in drug court for like the next year, and I hope that he gets his license suspended and just all of...
Well, I wonder what his feelings are now.
I hope he's fired because his name made the news. You know what I mean? I hope all of the things that we face every day happen to him so that he can understand exactly what he's supporting.
For. Yeah.
Right, and... I hope at the end of it he comes out a wiser man and better for
we
it.
can hope. I mean, it would be nice. You know,
unfortunately, they'll probably just give him a ticket. He'll pay it and then forget that it ever happened.
But I love this kind of irony. I love this kind of irony that he opposes any type of regulation of marijuana, even at the most compassionate level of medical. And here he is, like you said, possibly smoking a blunt driving down the road at 80 miles an hour.
Yeah.
You know, and he's you know, been an ardent opposer of medical marijuana or anything passing in New York City. I just love the hypocrisy of it. I love it. It's just, it is no different than when you hear a lot of other politicians that, they're living on the down low.
Well, and you know, a lot of people, this isn't the first time somebody's hypocritically been busted.
Right,
but his statement was most interesting to me when they said that he was going to release a statement. I went looking for it because after this happened, I wanted to see how he responded, if he was, you know, and so we do have the video that I was going to have.
Goody. It's not very long.
It's like a minute.
Less than a minute, yeah.
I was in a band called Mayday.
That's not it.
Of course, we'll have a quick advertisement,
ads,
so we'll go to the video in just 1 second.
So 48 seconds basically is his apology. Sorry, I got busted with weed.
It's not really an apology.
Oh, it's not really an apology, just the explanation with my kids.
Here we go.
First, I will not let this incident impede my public service and my calls for real mandate relief, a better economic climate, and better services for those in need in New York. This should not overshadow the work I have done over the years for the public and my constituency. And I am confident that once the facts are presented, that this will quickly be put to rest.
So what are the facts? What are the facts?
I love that look.
The facts are going to all come out, and this is my statement for right now, okay?
What do you think, Steve? Medical marijuana, is there a discrepancy between personal and political?
And that's pretty much the end. It fades out. So the thing that I love about it is he basically is saying, I'm not a stoner. Don't look down on me for this. When the facts come out, you'll know that.
Well, I love that he wants to be granted special considerations for his case, but he wouldn't grant.
Well, because
that
he's
to
not a
anybody.
dirty stoner. He's a
Right,
good person.
right, but-
He's done things.
Well, I don't let this overshadow my past work. Okay, well, why would you apply that to somebody else who had a drug to working on the job for so many years and then has a drug to have a random drug test and now they're fired? But up till that point, they did a great job.
Right.
What about things like that? I mean, he wants to be given a special consideration, but he wouldn't give anybody else that.
And I
special
just got to
consideration.
say, I couldn't get a job working in an office where, like, the most dangerous thing that could happen is I might get a paper cut
Yeah.
because I'm a medical marijuana
Not a patient.
patient.
Well,
If he
Russ
really
is-
was smoking and supporting these laws, he shouldn't be a legislator. He's got all of our well-being in his hands.
Right, and Russ has a great story about a drug, about his last and final drug test where his armpit hair wasn't good enough or clean enough for him to do the job that he'd been doing for 3 years, 2 years. Yeah, so to me, I find it really interesting that these people are caught, and he's not the only one.
Well, and in your case, it was as a computer programmer, right, Russ? It was office work. I mean, if we can't do office work because we might have smoked a joint last weekend, there's something wrong. And for a legislator who's voted to support and amp up these kinds of laws,
Right.
like I said, I hope they throw the book at him. I
so,
hope
too.
he has to.
I
go
hope he
through
has to go through
every
the same
hoop.
experience so that he'll have a new perspective on what we're fighting for, and what we have to struggle with every day. He talks about improving economics. Well, here's a great opportunity, dude. Here's this opportunity has been just laid in your lap, and you choose to oppose it. Well, now you get to see what we fight against every day.
There's that the video of the Huffington Post live appearance that I had just before I left last week. There was a woman from the National Federation of Independent Businesses who they asked point blank, would you feel, are you really saying that the workplace is safer, if someone smoked a joint on Thursday or Friday and then they test positive on Monday or Tuesday, and you think that makes the workplace safer? And she says yes.
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 And for the
Because
record,
it
it
doesn't.
doesn't.
The stoners.
And it's not about whether or not we're quote unquote impaired at work, which it should be about.
Right.
It's they've basically identified these risk factors that apply to stoners in general. For instance, if you listen to like the labor opposition, which like here locally, I think it's like Hoffman Construction or something like that, and some other people they really believe that you're going to be sick more often, that you're going to be missing work, that you're going to have more accidents, that you're going to do all of these things that make the workplace a risk regardless of whether or not you're high.
Right.
And that's their argument. That you're a less safe person because you're a stoner. So in that case, I mean, if that was true, then I guess, their drug tests work. But that's not
we
true.
know that's not
Statistics
true.
don't prove that.
No.
And the only people you're catching are the ones who are using marijuana, not the people that are coming to work drunk.
Did
Or
you say coming to high drunk?
I was going to say two different things at the same time. Coming to work high,
an
like on
Ivaism.
coke or meth or something, which clears your system fairly
Quickly,
rapidly in
right.
drug testing terms.
So they're a little harder to catch.
And so these people that are actually posing huge risks in the workplace.
I have to tell you a story about workplace safety. Years ago, before we moved here, I worked for a company. I won't mention the name, but there was this woman who she'd been red flagged at all the hospital emergency rooms because she would come in and she was drug seeking. This was, this has been not that long ago, but I mean, people knew about drug seeking, and at least she was flagged and all that stuff. And she would still get prescription drugs, and she would show up to work every day higher than a kite. I remember one time she came up to me and was talking, and she just kind of melted into the carpet. I'm not kidding. She was just like, she melted in the carpet. And we couldn't do anything. And she would pass out on the stairs, going up the stairs, and fall down. But because it was prescription drugs,
you have to accept it.
Legally prescribed.
And that's not true that you have to accept it. Let me be clear, because that's what everybody believes.
Right.
But what they fail to understand is that drug place testing, workplace safety, all of these things, they're predicated on the fact that the employer has the ability to mitigate these problems.
Right.
Not the obligation to get rid of every pothead and keep all the dangerous prescription drug users in there. That's not how it works. But employers are so concerned with having to prove their case, basically, that they're unwilling to tackle the actual problems at work, such as I've worked with plenty of people. I've worked with people handing out pills openly in the office, and because they're their prescription, nobody cares, even though everybody in the office is taking them.
Right.
They're not their prescription.
Oh, I know.
But there's this whole mindset around that prescription drugs are safe, that we can't do anything because it was prescribed by a doctor, or that it's okay. I mean, there's like this whole wrong way of looking at it.
Oh, yeah.
But if it's marijuana or any other drug, but marijuana being the one that they're usually busted on, then they feel like they have this obligation to kick you out of the workplace, or they're liable for any harm.
Right. And you know, and the thing is that it's a lot of that is also encouraged by insurance companies, liability insurance.
Well, that's what
exactly.
The liability issues there.
Right.
So we need to change that whole paradigm, so we're actually using some facts to make those weights.
Right. We need to dry out.
No more people melting into the carpet in the middle of the falling down the stairs. We got to take a quick break, but we'll be right back and talk some more. You're listening to A Different View.
Time and time again. Now if I could leave a number on the next one that you see, if it ain't too much trouble, could you get in touch with me? Because I'm looking for a miracle. Oh, I'm looking for a miracle. Oh, I'm looking for a miracle. And I know it's just a matter of time. Now, let her bring in the beat.
Adam Hand of Handmade Apparel produces quality custom designs for t-shirts, hats, and other apparel. Handmade Apparel is the official design shop for 420 Radio, The Russ Belville Show, Ganja John, and Cascadia Concentrates, among many clients who rely on Adam Hand for everything from short-run custom projects to full-run clothing lines. Adam's meticulous designs are individually crafted and screened in vibrant high-definition color. Visit handmadeapparel.biz to browse the selection of handmade gear or to get a personal quote for your own designs. Handmade Apparel, a proud supporter of 420radio.org.
Let him bring in the beat. You know I need to get away. You know I need to medicate to ease the pain. Get away. You know I need to get away. You know I need to medicate to ease the pain.
Now we're back with A Different View.
Welcome back to Different View. There has been a crud load of a boatload, a buttload.
Crud load. I don't know what a crud load is.
Was that a metric crud load?
Well, how much is a buttload? You tell me. There's been a lot of buzz about, in Oregon specifically, about looking to Colorado and maybe Washington. I think they're looking more toward Colorado about, what's going to happen here. There's been a few things proposed to legislature here, and we're all crossing our fingers and hoping that some of this stuff gets passed.
Yeah, for our listeners, I'm still working on getting through these bills to see all the details of what they do. But we already had a hearing regarding adding PTSD to the Oregon medical marijuana program as a qualifying condition, and that's been making progress. It was referred to the Judiciary Committee, I believe, where activists that are working on it have pretty much been assured that it's likely to pass out of there as well. So I think we're looking at the House now to see how they handle it, and that's looking really promising. We had a legalization bill introduced, which is very lengthy, and that's the one I'm still working on getting through. But overall, it allows home growing. It allows a commercial legal market, for adults to buy and sell marijuana here in Oregon. So, I mean, that's what we've all been long fighting for.
and possession limits that match the OMA.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really taking that medical marijuana. A lot of people used to call this the OMA for all, medical marijuana for all, because it kind of just takes that regulation that we've got so far and applies it to adults as opposed to patients. And it's a simple paradigm to kind of project out into a regulated model. It's got quite a few other things in there as far as the regulations go. I mean, they do attempt to address all of the concerns legislatively that maybe weren't included in previous efforts or language. And so far, it looks really promising. Like, there's a few people that are like, oh, I'd really rather it not be this way or that way, but there's nothing that stands out in such a way.
But not too much.
Nothing that stands out largely as being oppositional to our cause. I mean, there's a few people that would prefer.
I think they expect it. I think that this way they have a little influence on how it gets shaped. Otherwise, at 47%, I think they realize that
47%. Let's be clear on what that is for our listeners.
Right. Oh, sorry.
47% of Oregonians supported OCTA, Measure 80 last year, which was unlimited possession, unlimited cultivation for personal use.
Exactly.
It was wide open.
I think that they realized if we had had a lot more attention on that bill, then it would have passed.
Absolutely.
It would have absolutely passed. And I see this as a trend in other states, especially states that are neighboring Washington and Colorado, that we either step up and shape this, or the citizens will. And if the citizens shape it, then we're not going to get what we want, and we can have a mess on our hands.
And overall, like I said, there's a little bit of the detail. I mean, there's always going to be some disagreement over the best way to do it, but there's nothing that stands out as being just a no-go, for our community at large. And that's good. I mean, that shows that we're actually at least getting our concept of what we'd like to see across, even if it's not as ideal as we may have proposed ourselves. But then just to kind of add to all of that, we were talking, I think 2 weeks ago, maybe 3, it's blur, but we were talking about how the Oregonian had basically pushed for the legislature to take on this issue the day after Measure 80 failed.
And the Oregonians, it's conservative.
And despite the fact that this bill for legalization has kind of been out there for a couple of weeks now, they haven't written a single article, and they finally I don't know the author's name, and I can't pronounce it even if I have it in front of me, but he wrote an article about this bill. Finally, there was something in the Oregonian, which I think is a step forward, that as an Oregonian piece, it recognized that this bill was in place. But it didn't really focus too much on that previous editorial of how they had kind of pushed for, you know what I mean?
Right.
It kind of overlooked that previous call for this effort to say, hey, this is exactly what we were talking about, or no, you didn't quite get our point. You know what I mean? There's no feedback from the Oregonian on how they feel about this. But Noelle Crombie, who often writes about medical marijuana issues here in Oregon for the Oregonian.
She's one of the number one.
Yeah, she's written quite a few articles in the last few days, basically kind of pushing this issue as looking at Oregon's market, which we have this sort of gray market now that everybody acknowledges is there, but isn't necessarily legal or isn't understood to be legal but at large. She basically said we should take what Colorado has done and apply it here to Oregon medical marijuana and or legalization as a working model, which is, again, that kind of step up from the Oregonian pushing. Now, there was a lot of people I saw kind of commenting on her article saying, well, why do we need all this crazy regulation? Because in Colorado, they have like this seed to sale monitoring. And I believe it's all video monitored. It's very intensive oversight. And a lot of Oregonians are saying, we don't need to be quite so intensive, like in your face. It's costly and difficult to regulate on such a, but to have some regulation that the state says this is the way we'd like to see it done is a good thing. We do want to kind of have that dialogue and develop our system to one that Oregonians like.
Well, and I think Oregonians are looking looking, to the future to put more pressure on the legislature to come, to match what Colorado, instead of going through another costly initiative process. One that I think that they want their elected leaders to take the charge.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. I think that they feel more comfortable with that because if they don't like it, they can obviously vote out those people who put it together. But I do see that that those that are in power are shifting their conversations to a little bit more accepting of the idea of legalization, and they're building that framework, and they're also acknowledging that there's more than just the Cheech and Chong, people out there who like to consume cannabis. It happens to be, this guy Katz too, but people that are just, run-of-the-mill mainstream individuals that consume cannabis, and not, not just the subculture that they have the image of. And
then to kind of expand on the Oregon topic, of marijuana and regulation, Noelle wrote another article and expanded on our lack of regulation for medibles, which anybody in Oregon who's sampled medibles for the first time, or Colorado or Washington it's a learning experience, because the average person who knows even most of the prohibitionists, they think of smoking a joint.
Right.
And the mode that smoke affects you goes through your lungs, into your bloodstream. It's got a different route, and it's also a different chemical than if you eat it. If you eat it, your body changes it into an altogether different cannabinoid that has a different impact on your body, that comes on at a later time, lasts longer.
A lot longer.
It's usually more intense, especially for inexperienced people. And what she points out isn't any of that. It's basically that Oregon doesn't regulate or even track businesses that make or sell medibles.
Right.
And she goes on to talk about that same regulation, that we were just discussing.
There's no health codes. There's no commercial kitchens. There's none of that.
And that's a whole nother problem.
Right.
It really is. I mean, we want you to wash your hands in a medibles factory just as much as we do
in
a
it's not even just
bakery,
so much that they're not considering, and is that, people with allergies and nut allergies, weed allergies,
all of
things
these
like
things.
all those types of things, just your, basic standard clean kitchen, requirements,
or
food handler
labeling,
cards, things like all that stuff,
all of it,
nutrition values, all that stuff that we would expect from anything that we go to the grocery store and buy.
Now, on the bright side, let's be clear, many people in the community at large that do make these things, they voluntarily do label their products with, they get it tested.
Right.
How consistent or standardized these,
I think
whether you
understand.
could compare one medible to another based on different tests is up in the air. We don't have a standardized system for that.
I think that this community, when you're saying people are voluntarily labeling things, I think that speaks to the drive in this industry to be regulated, because for fair competition, everyone should be on the same playing field. And I think that, because we have these standards already out in other food industries, people are adopting some of them. They're not going as far as I'd like to see them go, but they're adopting them because they do want some sort of regulation, and that helps with their competition, gives them more credibility, and it helps with that competition edge. And and it tells me people are dying for some sort of regulation, some sort of guidance here, some sort of legal protection to be able to provide these products to people.
And I guess do it in a safe way. I mean, I don't know if they're necessarily screaming for regulation so much as a standard, though. I mean, a standard to identify. It can be, yeah. I mean, how it's enforced, I think, is the variance.
Sure.
And I think that people should have the right to know what these numbers mean, or, like if it said THC X percentage,
right?
What does that mean?
Right.
What if it's got a higher CBD? What does that mean? I mean, they have a right to understand what it is that they're ingesting and what the anticipated effects are.
And for somebody, I love RSO oil occasionally. It's not something that I feel compelled to take all the time, but I do see the medical benefits are amazing. I mean, they truly, truly are. But I do remember getting some, and it was, I think somebody said 49% THC and about 11% CBDs. And I'm like, holy cow! I was flying. And I didn't want that. That's not what I wanted.
Right.
I wanted the CBDs for the relief and not the THC for the psychoactive components. But
Well, and to look at a lot of the children that we've had on the show, a lot of those parents are looking for that high CBD and low THC because they're not wanting their kids to be all fruity and
THC,
flaky.
If you have seizures, THC will precipitate a seizure. That's why you want very low THC. Yeah, that's why. Yeah, that's why it's like. Oh,
not my field there.
Yeah.
I'm more politics and
but still,
argument.
But the point is like even for people that are medical and use this, for those things need to be listed on there. There needs to be some sort of groundwork or standards, like you said, that helps people regulate how they're going to dose, how they're going to label, some sort of standard as far as mildly potent to extremely potent to knock your socks off, couch lock for the next 24 to 48 hours. Do
you think they'd label it just like that? Knocks your socks off.
No, but you know what I mean. I mean, if it's a 5-star.
Hello, I'm looking for some of that knock your socks off stuff.
Couch lock for 24 hours.
But it's really promising to see the state newspaper starting to address this. I think we need to keep pressure on the Oregonian to actually come out and either support
I think that a lot of people are coming around that have we as we continue to educate people. I think people are starting to come around to the realization maybe they don't accept marijuana, they don't see the value in it, but they're at least seeing that we are winning in this fight, and they can either get on board and have some input on how it's shaped, or they can just let it happen to them. Most of us aren't willing just to let this stuff happen to us.
You're listening to A Different View. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the international dialogue.
Yeehaw.
The High Times Cannabis Cup in Amsterdam is recognized as the world's premier marijuana competition. Over the years, thousands of judges have attended the Cannabis Cup, sampling the best indicas, best sativas, best hybrids, and the best hash on the planet. In the April 2013 issue of High Times, read all about the sensational 25th Cannabis Cup that took place in November. Find out about the latest killer strains. Decide what to grow in your garden this year. Celebrate 25 years of the Cannabis Cup in this very special issue of High Times magazine. On sale now.
Funky, licious.
Oh yeah, that's right. Grooving, keeping it mellow here at the Funky Roller Ring. So join me, Big Daddy, every Thursday night. The doors open at 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific, baby.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Groove on. Groove on.
You get me too high. I overanalyze. If you've ever been too high, then you can sympathize. You get me too high. And I start to fly if I said some silly thing, and that's the reason why. Shiva, my sativa.
And now we're back.
You get me too high.
Welcome back. We're in the middle of the show tonight. We're always in the middle of the show every night. We're going to focus on what's going on in other countries. The UN.
Yeah, the UN has been doing the Convention on Drug Control. What's it called? Oh, Commission on Narcotic Drugs. The CND. It's the 56th annual. So they've been doing this for 56 years back from when they started with the opium, banning opium and that. And elaborated, in the 61 convention. Anyway, so they added all of these different drugs. They meet every year. They discuss how this is working on a global level to maintain prohibition. And this year, and I think this has come up at previous years, but this year it's getting attention that it's coming up, which is another one of those changes. There's been a lot of vocal opponents to continuing this international treaty. Now, there's, of course, been these people calling for basically the United States to demand that Colorado and Washington make marijuana illegal again because it's in violation of these treaties. But those voices seem very quiet. Maybe it's just what I'm listening to, but I've never seen so much dialogue about how there's different vocal critics of the drug war at this UN treaty.
They typically, it seems like they seem to focus on those that want to continue it, and maybe that's because they sound so crazy. More drug more penalties, more death sentences, and more seems to be the answer coming from the UN. So this is refreshing to hear a different. To hear the other side, those that are critics of this war.
Yeah, and so I know in the last year we've looked at Uruguay has decriminalized or legalized marijuana, depending upon which way you use that term. But from what I understand, more of like an Amsterdam sort of perspective.
Nice.
Was it Portugal?
Portugal.
Bolivia has called for ending the drug war. I think the Mexican president did, but then I think it's a new guy now, right? Isn't the new guy prohibitionist? But I mean, we've had a lot of international. I think that the previous guy had called for ending the drug war right as he was like leaving office. It was, but either way, there's been a lot of international dialogue about the effectiveness of this global drug war and how it impacts, from country to country. I mean, we know that most of the world's heroin comes from Afghanistan poppies,
right?
And there's reasons why it's beneficial to say Afghanistan to be growing these. A lot of the people were very upset about the idea of not being able to grow it because it was a very profitable way to feed their family and be successful.
Right.
That was their opportunity.
Exactly. Well, and they were able to make more from the poppies than they were from any other produce or crop that they could grow.
And so, I mean, depending upon what perspective you're looking at that from, it depends upon. Now, on the other hand, if you're in one of those receiving countries that's getting the heroin and having the effects of the heroin, obviously those aren't quite the same benefits as Afghanistan might be seeing from it. So there is like a global dialogue that takes place over this, but more and more countries have been coming out and saying that this international attempt at regulating this has failed as well, that it's not just like in the state of Washington or in the state of Colorado or in the United States that it's failed as a global effort.
Right.
And hearing that dialogue taking place among all of these different countries, I think is probably one of the more promising things that I've seen recently. There was plenty of negative stuff said there, but just seeing that happen, it to me is great. And I think even the terminology, one fellow that I believe was present, or at least keeping a lot closer eye on it than I was able to, was sharing different stories every day, as this was all of last week, Monday through Friday, that they met. So, I mean, I think it's concluded now. But every day there was more news coming out from him kind of highlighting what was going on. And I was just fascinated by the dialogue. Like I said, it's a whole different dialogue than we've heard in the past.
Right. Well, and I think we're going to continue to hear that from different leaders of different countries and organizations. I think, I really do see the shift happening. And I think putting a thumbtack on in the middle of one of the countries who has the largest consumers of illicit drugs kind of says something to the rest of the world, we have as proponents of ending prohibition have said across the world this needs to have an impact, not just in our country, but not just in our state, not just in our hometown, but around the globe. There needs to be a change in this policy.
I've made an effort, since I've gotten involved in cannabis reform, to sort of reach out to people globally, just to hear their different perspectives. I mean, in part, I kind of wanted to know how people in other countries approach drugs in general. Are they as stonerific as Americans tend to be about their cannabis use, or are they more spiritually inclined, or are they medicinally how they handle it, or are they opposed to it? Is it taboo in their culture? I just wanted to learn more about how everybody views it. But I have learned so much about how these countries view it. In Malaysia, for instance, they put people to death all the time for possession. Yeah. And we've actually had politicians in our country call for death. And I've seen ridiculous numbers of commentary, where people are like, we should just put all these people to death because they're not productive.
Get a death penalty. You can
for a large enough. It's on our books. It has never been used as far as I can tell. But there is the death penalty for a large enough.
Richard Lee, I think, was, if he was convicted with the amount that he had, or I don't think they ever did.
Well, I think that this is really the disturbing thing about the continuing prohibition is a lot of people like to point out that we don't enforce these laws. But the fact remains that these laws are there. At what point do we enforce them? Because I'd at least like to know that. I mean, if you're just going to tell me, oh, the law doesn't need to change because we don't enforce it anyway, how much pot before you start enforcing it?
Right.
At what point do I look at the death penalty? Would you actually give it to me? You know what I mean?
Right,
like,
right.
Is it okay that I have this joint if I'm an assemblyman, or is it a problem if I'm some kid, you know, that's poor and doesn't have a good lawyer?
Right.
And I think that what we see is that people are treated differently. That the
Well,
drug war allows for
the
us to
scales
do
of justice
that.
in the drug war are different for whoever's playing or whoever's, you know, consuming, if you will.
And it's not just within the United States. It's not just, I mean, Michelle Alexander pointed out, you know, in her book about the disparity in racial enforcement, that black people are far more likely to be in jail for drug use than white people, and not because they use it more. In use, it's the same. But if you look at it internationally, you can see how these drug war politics impact our diplomacy, our wars, our allies, who we define as terrorists. I mean, literally, this drug war it's a huge dialogue that we take for granted, and we miss a lot of how it's impacting the world that we live in, not just the country or state that we live in.
Well, and I think, you know, as Americans, especially if you're living in some of the southern states that are, attached to Mexico, really feel the impact of the drug war much more than we do, and you know, because they have you know, many immigrants leaving Mexico to escape that violence, to escape the death, and I think as a country here, we've always needed to look to our neighbors to the south to try to resolve that problem, because it is having a huge impact on this country.
Well, and I mean, we've been through long enough of the drug war to see it with Colombia, to see it with how many other countries.
Resolved nothing.
You know,
we've resolved nothing. We've made it worse. We've made it more profitable. And
the people that at this commission specifically that are calling for a harsher drug war have to be blind. I mean, how have you not seen how this has affected people so negatively?
You know, the more restrictions you have, the less people are willing to take the risk, which means that there's a few people that are still willing to take the risk, that are rising to power and becoming incredibly wealthy. That kind of power is frightening, and
the corruption that's involved with it. I mean, again, this assemblyman busted with pot. That happens all the time.
Well,
all the time.
I know it's happened many times. It makes you wonder if he was bought off, or if he was, makes you wonder why he would vote against something that he uses himself.
Exactly, and there's officers that have been busted for selling drugs. You know, during their day, they're busting the people who have the drugs. At night, they're selling their drug dealers drugs.
Right. Or the stuff they confiscate.
So are you arresting them because it's better for business, or are you arresting them because you feel that they have violated a law? And that's corruption. Well, we don't want laws enforced because it helps you to enforce them. If you have a personal stake in that's not justice. In no way is that justice.
Well, and right now, right now, with the way things are here, we've got all these safe access places opening up, and my concern is that because they're not technically legal, how easy is it to bring one down? And with all the competition and cutthroat as it is, that I worry that there's those sly sharks, if you will, or whatever you want to call them.
The disparate enforcement can be used for unscrupulous purposes.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter what those purposes are.
Exactly. And I worry about that happening unless, and that seems like a huge waste of resources, and not just, personal resources, and assets from the individual, but also for the police force and our state services to go out and bust people and chase down all these things, for what gain?
Well, and with alcohol prohibition, a lot of people, the Kevin Sabets of today, they like to point out that, that alcohol prohibition was different than marijuana prohibition, that they're not the same, because they know that if the public accepts that they are the same, it's self-apparent, like that it's not going to work. But if you do understand that they're the same, you see that the situation can only get worse. So the people that are saying, well, but we don't have an Al Capone, or we don't have this, or we don't have that, or it's more control, it can only get worse.
Right.
It can only get more corrupt. It can only get, the more that we try to prevent this choice, the more people are going to resist being forced into and it becomes a more corrupt thing, a more profitable thing, more crime associated with it. That's just logic. You can't make that go away.
No, it's only going to get worse the more they go after and bust people, because that just means that somebody else is,
So those people that are wanting to continue the drug war have to decide how much corruption do we tolerate?
Right.
At what point are we?
Well, at what
not
point do the
okay
scales
with it?
get tipped to where they see it as we see it, as this is out of control and it's unreasonable and
No longer serving its purpose.
No longer serving its purpose and can't be. It's just not acceptable.
Well, when we come right back, we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Eric Holder, kind of whispering in the background on the position of the federal government.
Awesome.
Too much labor, hard work, I'm in need of a raise. Every day I find myself with my mind in some other place. I'd rather go,
And now, another episode of Cannabis Shakespearean Theatre. I'm your host, Leonard Pinthgarnell III. Tonight we take a look at one of the finest works in the cannabis cinema, 1996's Half-Baked, starring David Chappelle, as interpreted by the Royal Shakespearean Cannabis Theatre Company. In this scene, Chappelle's character, Thurgood Marshall, has just admitted his addiction to cannabis to a room full of narcotics addicts. One addict, played in the film by Robert Saget and interpreted here by the Royal Company's Sir Frederick Farrach, takes umbrage at the suggestion.
I find preposterous the notion that you, sir, may be addicted to cannabis. In times previous, I have undertaken lubricious endeavours, most revolting and unbecoming of a proper gentleman, in my servitude to the wicked powder of the coca leaf. Lo, that is an addiction whose chains would bind Hercules. At any point in history, could one identify a moment in your life so sullied by your ignominy as a cannabis slave? Methinks not! Boo this man!
For Cannabis Shakespearean Theatre, I'm Leonard Pinthgarnell III.
Georgia. Hi, this is Willie Nelson, and I need your help. Alcohol prohibition didn't work in the 20s, and marijuana prohibition isn't working today. It's time we stop arresting law-abiding citizens because they prefer marijuana over alcohol. Nearly 2,000 Americans are arrested every day on marijuana charges. We're unfairly destroying the lives and careers of hundreds of thousands of people each year simply because they smoke marijuana. These are not criminals. They're average citizens like you, good neighbors who work hard, raise families, pay taxes, and contribute to their communities. We need your help to end marijuana prohibition once and for all. It's the fair thing to do.
For more information, contact NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Call toll-free 888-67-NORML or visit their website at norml.org.
Now we're back with A Different View.
Welcome back. You're listening to A Different View. I'm Jennifer, here with Iva. So this final segment, we used to put the blunt wrap here, and I kind of didn't start doing that, but I figured this was kind of a good blunt wrap sort of topic. Eric Holder, the guy known for Fast and Furious and the gun running and in charge of the drug war at large. He has not publicly responded to Washington and Colorado's initiatives to legalize marijuana. And so Washington and Colorado are pressing forward with regulations, doing what they can. They're in communication with the different federal officials to sort of iron out any of these details and complying with federal law while acknowledging, the will of the people. And it's putting everybody in kind of a sketchy gray area, much like medical marijuana has for many years. And so this article from the Denver Post I found to be a little bit interesting because it does allude to the various murmurings that are going on behind closed doors. And basically, Eric Holder is responding the same way they've responded with medical marijuana, which means more or less when it's politically expedient for them to arrest you, they will.
Right.
When it's not, they won't. And that's, again, not justice.
No.
So I'm a little disappointed if this is the stance that Eric Holder and the federal government is going to come out with, that we aren't pushing hard enough. On the bright side, I love the fact that Oregon, California, and who knows, I can't even keep track of how many states are all looking at their marijuana laws. I saw that Louisiana was looking at decriminalizing a larger amount, that Maine had a legalization effort that they were doing before.
Lots are out there.
Everybody's asking the right questions. We talked previously Kentucky and their hemp bill. I mean,
Right.
everybody's looking at cannabis. And if the feds aren't willing to answer it with these 2 states, I can't wait to see 2014 and see how many states suddenly have legal marijuana.
I know, and and I think there will be so many more states, in 2014, but even more in 2016 when there's a little bit more time to put things together. I really see that more and more states are going to be having initiatives out there. States that have never put anything up.
Right.
New states that people have wrote off. I really think that there's and if they aren't able to get initiative on the ballot, I think that they're going to be able to force their legislature's hand.
Me personally, as I was working on the Oregon Cannabis Tax Act, doing the petitioning, talking to people all throughout the state, the thing that kind of offended me most of all was when I heard people say that they didn't support it because the feds would never let us.
Mm-hmm.
I kept telling them, let's call their bluff. If they don't let us, then nothing changes.
Right.
Let's make them, let's not just presume that that's the case, because I believe that when push comes to shove, the feds have no authority to stop us. I think that it's the illusion of authority that has kept us in control. Much like the elephants, when you chain them and then you can remove the chain and they'll stay within that little paradigm because they don't know that they can go further.
Right.
And I think that that's where we are. And as soon as, we walk outside that, we'll realize there is no chain there. That was self-created. And I think that the drug war is largely about that. It's propaganda. It's meant to make you believe that a certain reality is truth and accept it without question.
Right.
And it's harmful.
Yeah.
So if we push them to actually prove that they have the authority to make these things happen, prove that they have and don't get me wrong, they could go into Washington and make arrests, and then court cases will come from that, and those court cases will answer those questions that we're asking. It's not that they can't come in and arrest people, it's what happens after they do.
Right.
And that's really why they don't do it, because unless they can prove certain perspectives of the case, they don't want certain questions answered, and they'll avoid them.
Well, I have to read this one little point that to that article with Eric Holden.
Holder.
Holden. I do that a lot. If you listen to the show very much, you'll find that out. One of the comments, one of the quotes here says, the state must show it can keep marijuana within its borders and away from children, and also prove that its regulations are comprehensive enough and well-funded enough to work. Well, the first part of that, keep it within its borders. I mean...
State borders,
right.
Can
But
the state of Colorado stop? And
we can't keep it out of prisons. How does he expect us to keep it out of, the state borders? Keep it away from children. What if they need it for medical purposes? Just don't use it. I mean.
Well, and again, this response basically takes the paradigm that they insist through their propaganda campaigns as fact. It doesn't ask those questions. It doesn't say, are we harming children by allowing this to happen? It doesn't say, is it important to keep it within our borders? It says we must do this, therefore it must occur.
Right.
And it's just taking a lot of information for granted. I mean, I've had interesting conversations with people that support prohibition, and I got to be honest, I haven't heard a really good reason, but there are some attempts at good reasons out there for why prohibition should exist. And I think if you actually make the argument, thumbs up to you. I don't have to agree with you. The problem is that we're not actually having those arguments. Nobody's actually answering those questions. And if you ask them, you're a stoner. So that way they don't have to answer those questions.
Exactly.
And that's why we need to ask them louder.
Right.
Because they need to answer them. I mean, if we're wrong,
we need to keep
prove
asking
it.
them. Right. If we're wrong, prove it. Yeah. If there's a correlation between, marijuana users and drug-based incidents of accidents, prove it.
And just this is like old news, and maybe it's just me that finally stumbled on it, but I was reading various anti-legalization, anti-medical marijuana information. Christian Thurston, I think, is the name. It's like a doctor that it's like from 2009, 2010. It's like old stuff. But I noticed that repeatedly throughout their arguments, that's what they were saying. Show us the science that proves that you're right. And I'm saying, show me the science that says that I'm wrong. Right. Why do I have to have science that you won't allow to occur?
Right.
To prove my position, or it must not be true. When you have the science to prove your position, supposedly, there's been thousands and thousands of studies trying to prove how harmful marijuana is. How come you can only guess at it?
Right.
How come you can only tell me it might be linked to?
Well,
it may cause this, and you can't tell me anything about what it does?
Right.
I mean, it's a diversion.
Well, that's because it isn't about whether it's safe or not. I mean, we allow a lot of stuff that isn't safe into the market and perfectly legal to use and consume. I mean, even though prescription drugs are supposed to be well regulated, they're quite dangerous. Tobacco, alcohol. I mean, for crud's sake, you can get a little bit of nutmeg and go wild.
Not wild, dead.
Well, that too.
It depends, but
it's
deadly.
There's synthetics and things. There's lots of things.
But all
out
of
there
these
that
things
are
are considered more useful for their other uses than the concern for their harmful uses.
Right. Yeah. But they're highly toxic. So I don't think it has anything to do with safety. I mean, even people the other argument that we hear a lot is, what about the children? We're marketing to the children and making suckers and candy. And I'm like, well, we have candy, medicine that is today produced by pharmaceutical companies directed towards children to make it easier for them to take.
Exactly.
Make it more appealing for children.
Well, and
so
if a child
we can't have it both ways.
if a child needed to use cannabis, and again, we've had multiple different children on
there
this
are
show
many children,
that benefit from cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
Don't we want them eating a sucker as opposed to smoking a joint? Am I
right.
wrong on
exactly.
this?
I know. That's what something. Well, wouldn't you rather the child use the sucker instead of the joint?
I mean, because we want them to associate the medicine with the plant, not with the method of use of smoking.
And last week, the child that had the bong, that was supposedly smoking the bong. I mean, what do you prefer? The child smokes out of the bong, or sucks on a sucker, or eats a couple medicated gummies?
Well, and as we were talking about earlier, the mode of how it affects you by eating it versus smoking it. It's different. I mean, and you need to have those possible ways to ingest it. And most people aren't going to be eating raw bud or even some of the concentrates.
Well, juicing, but still, they're not.
No, yeah. I meant just mouthfulls of psychoactive green
Put
stuff.
A little
That's not an effective way to take the medicine.
Right.
The drug war would have you believe that that's what people are doing or smoking it or whatever. But the reality is that the more we know about this, the more we've learned how diverse the options are in taking this with the least amount of negative harms.
Well, and these things, to be fair, Jennifer, these things were part of pharmacology a long time ago. Cannabis was used regularly and effectively for all kinds of ailments until it became, illegal.
And it was perfectly okay to grow it in your backyard.
Right, exactly. It was a weed after all. It was perfectly part of regular medicine not that long
And people
ago.
act like that's such a strange idea and the witch doctors and all. But then they go out and they focus, particularly here in Oregon, which is a very nutritious minded state at large.
Right.
You know what I mean? Not that
Oregon
everybody
diet,
is,
yeah.
but everybody's kind of got that influence of farmers markets, organic
return to
foods,
nature,
local buying, all of these things. If you could get your medicine from your backyard, is this something to fear?
Right.
I mean, why is that bad?
Right, exactly. Native Americans have been living off the lands. All pharmacologists started from nature anyway. So, why is it bad that this is something that in its purest form is bad? But, I mean, I don't know. I think as long as they can't profit from it or, they're not going to greenlight it.
Yeah, so I want to see more pressure on Holder, and I want to see at least 5 or 6 more states legalize this coming election in 2014.
I'm telling you, it's
and
coming.
Then more.
It's exciting to be in this time because the citizens are saying enough.
And with alcohol prohibition, we talked about it before. It was nearly overnight once it happened. Once it tips, it tips.
Yeah, I see that happening now. I think they see the momentum now.
Keep moving.
Yeah, keep moving. Keep plunging ahead.
So you're listening to A Different View. We're here every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Pacific time. You can check out our webpage, adv420.com. And we do put every episode up there so you can watch past episodes that you may have missed. Check us out on Facebook, A Different View 420, and on Twitter, ADV420. See you next week.
See you next week.
But I love my pot. Don't make me hungover or act like an ass.
rest of you drink your liquor, and I'll smoke my grass. So there, Mr. DUI, who do you think you are? You breathe into a breathalyzer just to start your car. Instead of blowing out, you could have been sucking in. I bet you'd do things my way now if you had to do it over again. You'd like to smoke weed, and you'd like it a lot. But you'd say, fuck liquor, I'd rather smoke pot. It don't make me hungover or act like an ass. You ought to give up drinking, start smoking grass. You ought to give up drinking, start smoking grass.